Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday, everybody. I am here with my friend Courtney, who I will intro here in just a minute. We'll let some of you guys join. When you join, make sure that you tell us that you can hear us. Say hi if you're here. This is being broadcast simultaneously into my Facebook group, Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners. If you're not there, I need you to come join us, jamietroll.com/group. And also on my YouTube channel, Jamie Troll. So if you're watching me on YouTube, make sure you hit that little subscribe button. It's like a hug. And on my Facebook business page as well. So wherever you are watching, hello and happy Wednesday. It's pretty outside. It's cold outside here today in Nashville, Tennessee, but it's very pretty. Not a cloud in the sky today. So we had a little bit of a pivot. So you guys may have seen our previous event. Today, we were going to be talking to one of the reps from Gusto about payroll. And so that was the plan until yesterday I found out that he came down with COVID. So not to laugh at that, but he's doing fine. But that's the world that we're living in these days is, we're learning how to pivot and quickly make a shift when we need to. So thankfully, my good old friend Courtney said, well, I'll come on live with you. We can talk about QuickBooks and we can talk about bookkeeping. So to intro Courtney, she is the QuickBooks guru, QuickBooks Online. You may have seen her around, she's around the group a lot. She's oftentimes answering your questions, doing Loom videos for you to show you how to do things in QuickBooks. She's that person. So as much as I know the concept of bookkeeping, I teach the concept, but when it comes down to the nitty gritty, I'm not doing a ton of bookkeeping outside of my own. So I do like to have Courtney in here to talk a little bit more specifically about things, different issues you could run into and things like that. So she's also been a part of my Financial Fitness Basics course. For those of you who took that, you probably recognize her. You might have been on the workshop we did with Courtney. But now I wanted to bring her back to the whole group because it's been a while since everybody saw it. So hopefully everybody can hear. I'm not getting any comments coming through. So if you're watching, give us a comment to make sure that you can hear us because I always get nervous about that. Okay. So I am going to turn it over to Courtney to kind of introduce herself. And then we're going to get right into talking about the 4 big mistakes you see oftentimes with bookkeeping, right?
Yes. When you're doing it yourself, for sure.
Great. Yeah.
So what I do is I help small business owners do their own bookkeeping until they can hire a bookkeeper. So that's the biggest thing that I think differentiates me from other people when in the DIY space is because I genuinely believe that at a certain point, you need to hire out a bookkeeper. And so I'm getting feedback, Jamie. Should I
can hear you okay.
Okay,
and
cool.
Everybody else is saying that they can hear. So I think it's fine. I'll turn you down a little bit so that mine isn't causing it.
Okay.
I will say I totally agree with Courtney on all of this. I think obviously in the very beginning of your business, DIY is usually what makes sense. I love that Courtney kind of bridges the gap between the full DIY and figure it out yourself, which usually means putting it off and putting it off and putting it off and then scrambling at the end of the year and realizing that everything's messed up and trying to reconcile it for the first time, right? So there's that strategy. And then you've also got kind of the strategy of like hiring out, which we have an amazing preferred vendors list, you guys. And I see April is here and I'm going to put her up on here because she is one of our preferred vendor bookkeepers, Sand Dollar Bookkeeping. We have a new list. It's linked above jamietroll.com/preferred-vendors. And you can see who all of our awesome ladies are that we have vetted this amazing preferred vendors list. But some people are kind of in the middle where they're like, DIY totally feels like a lot to put on yourself. And they're not quite in that place financially where hiring out a bookkeeper makes sense right now. I do think you probably need it sooner than you think, but Courtney offers this great kind of middle ground where you still get some support, but you aren't necessarily having to go out and fully outsource it. Right. So talk to us a little bit and we'll get into, I just want people to kind of know what you do first. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that at the end too. And then we'll get into kind of the meat of today.
Sure. So what I do is I help people who are in that in between. So like Jamie said, there's three pretty much buckets where small business owners who are doing their own bookkeeping fall into. So there's the total DIYer where, figuring out yourself, doing the tutorials on YouTube, and even like QuickBooks itself has so many trainings. So if you have more time than money, this is an awesome option for you. The biggest thing is making sure that you understand what you're doing. Because if you don't understand and you keep moving forward, that, in my professional opinion, it causes issues. And I've seen it time and time again in that area. Then there's the DIYer who needs support, like Jamie said. So if you aren't at a place where you can outsource, but you don't have the time to research all of the things that you need to know, that's a really good spot where you can have somebody be on your team to help you out. And so that's my sweet spot. So I have a membership where, I have weekly office hours and co-working spaces so that you can get your bookkeeping done with somebody like me on the line. It is me, not like me, it is me, who can help you as you're going through your bookkeeping. So it's like, hey, I actually ran into this system. So there's group coaching, all that kind of stuff. So, because when I first started, I was doing my own bookkeeping, but I didn't know where to turn to for help. So that is definitely a bucket of people. And then there are the outsourcers. Your business is financially at a place where outsourcing is possible, and you're willing to cut costs to not deal with your bookkeeping. There's certain people who just don't want to deal with it, and that's totally fine. So as long as it fits in your budget, and you are able to cut costs to make sure that happens, that's perfect. So that's really the three buckets that I have found when I talk to small business owners of where they align. Now, there are times where you could move from one to the other. So maybe you're outsourcing and then something happens in your business and you have to scale back. That's what's really beneficial about knowing at least how to do your bookkeeping, because if you ever need to pivot and switch gears, you can for a time and then go back to outsourcing.
Great. Yeah, I agree. I agree with all of that. I mean, there are so many different options, and depending on where you are with your business, you want to really be looking at it. But overall, bookkeeping is important, right? It is important, and you want to make sure that you're doing it correctly for a couple of reasons. And you guys know I harp on this. It's not just for taxes. You do bookkeeping so that you have a better handle on your business strategically, and you have numbers that you can look at and actually analyze how you're doing. And I think a lot of people just wait to really kind of get their bookkeeping together. And even I can fall into that trap, you guys, if I don't stick to my habits, right? If I don't stick to my habits, that we wait, and then it's not as useful down the line, right? It's useful if you're actually paying attention to it and keeping up with it. Then you can use it to help you make decisions in your business. Okay, so let's talk about those 4 kind of big bookkeeping mistakes that you do see the most. When people come to you and they say, Courtney, help me out. What have I done?
Right.
Who hasn't been there, right? Like, what have I done here? Help me with this. What are those things that you've seen?
So the interesting thing is, because I have been looking at that lately, is I'm trying to take a high level approach of what actually is it? Is it like an actual piece of the QuickBooks section? Like, what is it? So what I've found is that bookkeeping is a process. It's something that you do over and over and over again. So what I'm learning is that it's the actual process that people are using that's tripping them up more than anything else. So the first group, and again, I'm going to say 4 different kind of groups of people that I'm seeing coming into my doors, is that there are business owners who are using the rapid fire method. So these business owners hit the ground running with QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop, and they don't take time to make sure the QuickBooks file is set up properly. And if they're not sure about what to do about a transaction, they make a decision like business owners do, and they take care of it, and then they power through. So in business, a lot of times you have to make those decisions and then just go with it, right? But that's a problem when you're going into QuickBooks, because often those types of business owners start at the bank feed and then they just hit add like you're nobody's business, okay? And they don't check to see if the vendor is accurate, if the expense account is accurate, and this leads to random accounts being allocated and having expenses going to random or incorrect chart of accounts. It also leads to duplication. Another mistake in this method is to provide your CPA your books for your tax returns without ever reconciling like a single bank account. And I've seen this happen many times. And sometimes it leads to having to reprocess your tax return because the difference was so big, because there were duplications with revenue or anything like that. So that is a method that I really see a lot of issues with.
So I want to jump in because this is something I think in the accounting world, like we know what reconciling is, right? Like that's something that has been part of my vernacular because I'm a CPA. And so I've grown up with understanding what reconciling is. I've seen a lot of people that get confused on like, what the heck does that mean, right? And they think that just like adding their expenses and things like that is reconciling. Truly reconciling really is the point of reconciling is it's a process that you go by to compare what has now been put into QuickBooks, right, to what actually came through your bank statement, and making sure that all that activity that you posted through QuickBooks and that you've added to your books actually jives with those cash changes that came through your bank account. Yeah. And the reason reconciling is so important is because that will realize if you've double counted something, if you haven't counted something, right? You're going to see it. Things aren't going to reconcile. And that is one of the things I know, I'm sure like that's what you do first. You're like, okay, because anytime there's a problem, when was the last time you reconciled and did, how did we do? Were we out at all? And that's where you can kind of trace it back. But it is hard if you wait a full year to reconcile your books, or maybe you've never done it and you do it the first time and you're like, oh, I'm out, $15,000. Like, where is it?
It can be overwhelming when you're doing a lot at once. And that's the biggest thing that I talk to about my members is taking things in small bite-sized chunks. If you are sitting down at your books and you're like, hey, I'm going to get this stuff done in an hour, that is not going to happen. I'm just going to tell you right now, it's not a realistic expectation to get your bookkeeping done in an hour when you've put it off for a year or more.
Yes. Now I'm a huge proponent of setting aside a time. Every week I think is best if you can. Maybe every other week to go through and do certain things, and then every month you need a longer chunk of time. So I do Money Mondays. I sit down on Mondays. I go through it. And the first Monday of every month, it's a longer process because that's also where I do different cash allocations. I move things to my tax account. I'm doing all of that. I'm paying myself, all of that. But if you're making sure that you're reconciling, I would reconcile probably at least monthly. Monthly is a good cadence to reconcile. That's kind of what we usually do in the accounting world. Because then okay, the problem is somewhere in this month. And so if you're going to try to figure out a problem, is it going to be harder if you've got 12 months to try to figure out? Or 1 month is going to be a heck of a lot easier if you've got 1 month to be looking at, and you can sit there and kind of do the matchup of your transactions and see what went wrong. When you wait a year or 6 months or whatever, holy heck, that is the worst, worst process in the world.
It really depends on your transactions because I have a really big client that I still have, and I reconcile on a weekly basis because the transaction level is so big. Yes. That like if I waited until the end of the month, it would just be like a year for that.
Yeah. If you're having hundreds of transactions in a week, do it more frequently, right? If you're having 100 in a month, okay, maybe then 1 month monthly is fine, but it really goes by that. So Christina said that people, they use the suggested categorization. Oh man, so what happens with the suggested categorization sometimes is you pick something wrong one time and then it just says, well, we might as well just do this wrong always.
Right. And that's because the algorithm that QuickBooks uses, it's an algorithm. So they're trying their very best to do what's right, but it doesn't mean anything. So do not take that bank feed as set in stone. QuickBooks is trying to assist you, but it doesn't know it for sure unless you've set it to the rules.
Yes.
You specifically have done that, then it knows, but otherwise it's guessing. It's still guessing.
Rules are great as long as you set them up correctly, right? Rules are fantastic. They can automate. I'm sure that's something that Courtney helps with as well. Christina here, by the way, is one of our preferred vendors as well, one of our new preferred vendors who is a bookkeeper. So I love having our preferred vendors on here.
For sure to chime in because this is the thing is like, when you get into a set of books, there's a lot of different ways that you can do things. And for most of us bookkeepers, we're going to try to learn about your business, what works best for you, and is what is most efficient for your specific business. So if somebody tells you, okay, this is the only way to do it, well, maybe there's another way to make it more efficient for you. And just finding a good bookkeeper who can help you is so important.
I like this comment also by Christina, just because I think people think that they're going to save money by trying to do it themselves and then waiting to the end of the year and then giving it to a bookkeeper. A bookkeeper will typically charge you more than what it would have cost over that year. If they had been doing it routinely, it'd be much easier for them.
Yep.
They're going to charge you that year of bookkeeping that you waited on, plus a premium to help troubleshoot, because now they're having to go back and fix things that you did. So it actually doesn't help you if you think you might have to get somebody to help you. You might as well have them helping you throughout right? So that you don't get in that spot, because it actually can be more costly to have them, you're not gonna just pay for 1 month of bookkeeping if you wait till the end of the year.
Especially also, because I'm going to talk about this later, if you give your bank statements and your box of receipts to your CPA, that's expensive.
Oh, yes. Box of receipts. Bad news. Bad news, box of receipts. I have been on the receiving end of boxes of receipts before in my former days. I'm not looking to go back to that. Okay. So that was, how many did we cover? I can't even, I lost track.
I mean, that was just the one, but what to do if you recognize that you are using the rapid fire method. The first thing, if you are a DIYer, complete DIYer, take time to learn about the chart of accounts and how they flow into the profit and loss and balance sheets. It's really important. If you have purchased Jamie's Financial Basics courses, sometimes you purchase a course and you don't know what's in it. Go take the QuickBooks module that's in that course. That's a really good training for that.
And we talk about P&Ls and balance sheets and all of that. And I'm really passionate about, one of the reasons people don't use their P&L is because their chart of accounts is a mess, right? Yeah. They're not consistent. And that may be one of these 4 bookkeeping mistakes. But one for me is they're not consistent in how they're categorizing things. And so your P&L is not helpful to you if strategically you look at it. And sometimes you put things in professional services, and sometimes you put it in education, and sometimes you put it, in contractors, right? Then what the heck is that helping you when you're trying to look at it month to month or year over year, seeing what's changing? If your chart of accounts is a mess, that's a good place to start as well. So that's part of the QuickBooks setup, is thinking about how do I want to view my business? Because remember, it's not just for taxes. We're doing this also for your own decision-making in your business. So you've got to think about, what are the things I want to see and are going to help me in making decisions in my business, right? So when you're creating that chart of accounts, so I'm passionate about that, but a lot of times people just jump in and aren't even really familiar with what their P&L looks like. And they're creating all these different accounts or using them interchangeably, and it's garbage in, garbage out, right? If you're not, being consistent and having a plan, what's going to come out is not useful. And I think a lot of people feel that way, but it's just because there's not a process and a consistency there.
Right. So if you're doing the DIY with support, hire someone to help you take a look at your file to see what's going on and help you to get cleaned up. So just so you know, there will be a link for the information for me. I am doing a Black Friday sale that has a deeper discount just for Jamie's members only. So you get an extra deeper discount. So that'll be there. But if you're almost ready, if you're so close to being outsourcing, or you're ready to outsource, just go ahead and hire the bookkeeper. Let them help you get cleaned up and reboot it. Don't try to do it on your own, I hear a lot of people say, well, I want to get it cleaned up first. No, have them do it. Have them help you. Don't feel like you have to get it cleaned up for someone else. They know what they're doing. There's no judgment there. Seriously, shame-free zone. If you don't have a bookkeeper or a CPA that allows you to feel that shame-free zone, get a new one.
Absolutely. And that is so critical, because I do hear that a lot, that people are well, they're almost embarrassed to go work with a bookkeeper. That's their job. That's what they do best, right? That's not your job. That's not what you do best, right? You do best what you do in your business. It's usually not the highest and best use of your time. Honestly, if you're spending a ton of time doing bookkeeping, give that to somebody that is good at that. They'll be able to do it in a lot less time than you, and with better quality as well. Okay, let's see. Real quick, Liz says, is it too late for someone, to come in and audit my books, even if I've been doing my own business for 15 years, figuring it out as I go? I know the answer, but I'll let Courtney answer.
It's never too late. It's never too late. So there's going to be different methodologies of how to handle it, especially if you've closed your tax returns. I'm a big believer in kind of letting that be the way it is and not kind of going back and going crazy into that kind of thing and moving forward fresh, only because small business owners lack time. So if you've paid a CPA and they've, filed your previous year's tax returns, let's keep it like it is and move forward. Get that general journal entry for your tax returns from your CPA from the last year and move forward and just start to get cleaned up moving forward.
Yeah. It's literally never too late. And different bookkeepers, I mean, depending on when you do it, different bookkeepers are going to take different approaches for cleanup, right? I've known people that have gotten books cleaned up for prior years in the past. Now you can also say, we're just going to cut bait and start January 1 of this year and get that cleaned up for this year's tax return. You can work with your bookkeeper on what you want to do there. But there are a lot of options.
With a bookkeeper,
you're never too late.
With a bookkeeper to outsource, and you want to clean up, go for it. Just the reason why I say my methodology is that way, for DIYers, you're already crunched for time. So that is my methodology of how I work with it. But if you're outsourcing, clean up. Have that person clean up. Have it I want best practice in all of my books. So that is. I don't work with people who don't who don't want to do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also good to check on your bookkeeper, because not all bookkeepers are created equal, you guys. And not all bookkeepers are doing the job that they need to do. So you do want to make sure, and your tax preparer oftentimes will be able to tell you when you get to taxes and there's a lot of confusion and frustration, and you've been paying a bookkeeper and now your tax person is having to redo a lot. Oftentimes that's when you can tell that maybe your bookkeeper isn't doing what they need to be doing. Okay. So give us some other, some more.
So the hop around method is another method that I see a lot. So the hop arounders, they do their bookkeeping, but not super consistently. And when they do, there's no rhyme or reason. It's like, oh, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to hop over here, and I'm going to hop over here. Even though they have a business checking account, they tend to use any account, whether business or personal, to pay for business expenses, depending on which account has money in it. Why is this an issue? Well, hopping around in the bookkeeping rhythm can lead to duplications or other errors because they aren't using a consistent method. And if you use a consistent method, it keeps your transactions in order and it just avoids a lot of messiness. Commingling, which is mixing your business and personal expenses. I know that Jamie has said so many things about this. It's just a huge compliance issue with LLCs and S Corps who just don't do it. So what to do if you're DIYing and you're using the hop around method? Take time to learn an accounting method and an order that works for your business, and make the commitment to pay your business expenses with your business account. Even if you have to transfer funds as an owner investment into your business to pay for stuff, just get into the best practices of using your business money.
Yes, 100%, because that is one of the biggest messes to try to figure out, is if you're running both things through and you've got all these accounts funneling, and then you're having to sit there and say, this was personal, this was business. It's a mess, not only compliance wise, from a legal perspective, it's a mess. If you're an LLC or corp, but it's also just a mess from your time and energy that you're having to put into it. So just make sure it's separated from the outset so that you don't have to sit there and kind of do that backwards work. I like this question. Do bookkeepers do their own bookkeeping? Some do, I would imagine. Depends.
Yeah. I mean, I still am doing my bookkeeping. I'm actually in the process of outsourcing my own bookkeeping, my personal.
I still do my own. I'm not a bookkeeper. I still do my own, mostly just because I have a process, but I'm actually probably at the point where I may be outsourcing soon, because it's just not the best use of my time. It is part of my process for reviewing my numbers, but if I can cut out sort of the, just the more compliance side and really focus on the strategic side. Either way, even if you're outsourcing bookkeeping, I got to say this, y'all, even if you're outsourcing your bookkeeping, as the business owner, you need to be reviewing your financials. So a lot of times people get a bookkeeper and they're like, oh, it's taken care of. I don't need to worry about it. You need to be looking at your P&L every month, maybe your balance sheet, depending. Probably some reports around cash, right? There's all kinds of reports that you can get out of any software that you use, but especially QuickBooks Online. I love their reporting feature, and most people don't even know how data rich it is, but you have to set it up correctly to get that data out, right? So that's one of the other things. I have one question here that I think is a good one too. Hang on, let me find it. Do you prefer QuickBooks Online or desktop? I'm going to give my answer, and then I'll let Courtney give it. I'm pretty sure it's the same. So I understand it is a learning curve to go from desktop to online, right? It really is a learning curve. The benefits, though, of online, we're living in a world where things are, we want to be able to access things on our phone, right? Like we want to be able to, have real-time access to information. We want to be able to share that information with other people that need, our accountant or a bookkeeper or whoever that needs that information. The benefits of that, like cloud-based access for multiple people at once, you don't have to worry about version control. It is a learning curve. But I think when most people get frustrated with QuickBooks Online, it's because it's different than what they know how to do already, right? And there's that learning curve. And because they haven't set it up in the way that needs to be set up. And then it turns into frustration. So that's why it's so important to really take control of that and have that process like Courtney's talking about up front. And then I think QuickBooks Online wins. There are some, they keep coming out with more functionality. It used to be that desktop, like more complex businesses really kind of needed to stay on desktop if you wanted to do like project costing and stuff like that. They're adding more and more to QuickBooks Online. I don't know that they'll ever fully phase out desktop, but the support is kind of phasing out a little bit. And that's partially how they're doing it. They're really trying to push more of the QuickBooks Online model from what I've seen. Yeah. I'd love your thoughts, Courtney.
Yeah, so I personally think small business owners should be using QuickBooks Online because of the functionality. So full transparency, the last company that I had that I was going to transfer over to QuickBooks Online, I renewed with Desktop 2021, and I've had issues, and it said that it had the bank feed thing. It doesn't. So there's different reasons why I chose to stay with the desktop version, mainly integrations for this company that I have a ton of integrations with. So personally, there are certain things that I like about QuickBooks Desktop better. The sales tax reports are easier to read, like just certain things, different types of reports, inventory things. But for most small business owners who need to efficiently do bookkeeping, QuickBooks Online is the better way to go, just hands down. So.
Yeah. And once you learn it, it really does does get easier. The functionality, I think, is just great.
Yeah.
And yes, I agree with all these comments. I'm putting up everybody's comments because I think there are some really, really good ones. I like Bree. Bree's a tax preparer, but she doesn't do her own bookkeeping because it would never get done. I believe that, Bree. I believe that.
And we're going to talk about that two methods down. Because that's the thing is you need to make sure that the bookkeeping actually gets done on a consistent basis, like Jamie was saying. And it looks like I'm here by myself, and that's a little scary to me. But I'll go ahead and do the next method, and hopefully Jamie will pop back in. Yay!
It kicked me out. I'm glad you were still in. I was like, did it shut down? That's the first time I've had problems ever in StreamYard. It just kicked me out.
Okay,
just wanted to listen to you. Okay, so let's go on to the next issue you see a lot.
Okay, so the ghost method. We talked about that at the very beginning. Doing your bookkeeping once a year at tax time, if even then, really, or in handling your bank statements and a box of receipts over to your CPA or EA. Why is this an issue? We've already talked about it. You don't have full use of your numbers to help you make decisions throughout the year. That is huge. You're also, what I've noticed is that you're tempted to cut corners just to get it done quickly, which from a compliance standpoint is really, it puts you in a negative situation. So you never want to do that. Also, your CPA may not be able to get to your stuff in time because you're so last minute and that kind of thing. And that's an issue. So what to do if you're in that situation, or that I call it the tax time crazy cycle. If you're in that, first and foremost, you have to make the commitment to get off that cycle. There's something that you have to do in order to get off, and that's make the commitment to start doing your bookkeeping, consistently. But if you're a DIYer, figure out what makes you ghost and find a way to learn about what that thing is. So if it's reconciliation, that's just like, oh, I just don't want to deal with it. Figure out what the thing is that happens every time you reconcile. So maybe it's a consistent problem that you're doing. So figure out how to fix it so that when you get to reconcile, it's not there anymore. So also keeping your bookkeeping time on the calendar, like Jamie says, hers is Monday, mine is Friday. Whatever time works best for you, where you are like you're mentally good, and you have no distractions. Sometimes I have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning for that to happen. Have my coffee, and then by 6 I'm ready to go, and I'll knock my bookkeeping out. So it's just finding the best time of day that actually works. And also, like I said, you're not going to get your whole bookkeeping done if it's like past your cleaning up. You're not going to get all your bookkeeping done in an hour. So please don't think that. Sometimes if there's a research item, so sometimes you get to a point in your bookkeeping and you're stuck, and that there's just this thing, like sometimes I have to hop on a support call with Square or whatever. I set time, like I set an hour of time just to research, not to get anything else done, but just to research. That's really important, because then it's like you have expectations, you set the expectations for yourself to, get that piece done, so that then the next time you have your regular bookkeeping method, you're ready to go, the answer.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And ghosting is an issue. I actually have like an appointment on my calendar that just is recurring. And it's longer on that first Monday of the month, so that I have it set aside, because if you don't have the time set aside, you're never going to be in the mood. Like bookkeeping, even I am never like in the mood, like, oh, let's go do some bookkeeping right now. Like that's not a thing. So if you're waiting until like it strikes you to be like, oh, I'm ready to get in here, it's not going to happen. So I recommend just calendaring it, and then, committing to yourself that you're going to do it, regardless of what gets in the way. Okay. So the last one. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Just really quickly, if you're really close to outsourcing, just have somebody do it for you. Like, even if you're just this close, like what can you cut in order to make sure that outsourcing, because if you're ghosting, you just need to, it's something that you just don't really want to do. So you need to outsource it really.
And it doesn't take like a big mistake to make outsourcing worth it, right? Like it doesn't take you making a massive mistake, like small mistakes that then does like it can impact your business decisions, but it can also impact your taxes. And those mistakes can, like, I know somebody who literally filed a tax return and had duplicated half of her income. Like, that's a huge problem. And it doesn't even have to be that big, but like, even if you're duplicating a small percentage, or even if you haven't taken all of these expenses, it doesn't take. And then we think about IRS audit, right? Then the cost of an IRS audit, if you don't have everything documented, you don't have everything buttoned up the way it needs to be 3 years from now when they come back and audit this year, right? So the cost of a bookkeeper, I know for a lot of people, they're like, oh, it's just an extra like cost. I don't know that that's something that I can afford. In the grand scheme of things, it's worth it, right? Now, if you're not really like making a ton of revenue, if you're not really at that place yet, I get that there are people that can't just, it doesn't make sense for them. But then having somebody like Courtney there is a very important thing to do, so you don't make these mistakes that are going to cost you, right?
Yeah. It's just, you need to do it. It's something that you don't have the option. The IRS doesn't care that you don't have time. The IRS doesn't care that you don't know what to do. They expect that you're a business owner and you're going to figure it out. That's like,
true about a lot of things. I think sometimes we think like, well, they'll go easy on me because I didn't really know. I didn't know is not an excuse to the IRS, right? They're not going to say, well, you tried hard. I guess we won't assess you on fines and penalties, right? Like that's not a thing that they do. They expect you to get that education, and they're going to treat you as such.
Exactly. Yeah. So
okay, number 4.
The last method that I see is it's working just fine. So this is a system where your company outgrows the method that you have been using. And I've seen this in 2 ways. One is the use of spreadsheets for longer than you should use them. And that becomes an issue when the manual data entry takes longer than it should, because your business has grown to a level that you need software. And maybe it's because you're like, the software is so expensive, but I look at the software as a virtual assistant, especially QuickBooks, because it does so much stuff for you that it's like, the cheapest employee that you'll ever have, really. Spreadsheets are harder to reconcile to one another if you have a ton of them. It's definitely possible, but the more that you grow, the harder it is to deal with multiple spreadsheets. Yeah. And then also, just to know, spreadsheets are prone to human error, so you have to be very careful about every cell and that it's working properly. So what to do? So move to an accounting software. And I have to say, Jamie and I prefer QuickBooks Online. We've already talked about this, but just so that you know, Jamie's link to QuickBooks Online really is the best deal that you can find. It's the 30 days free and a 1-year discount. So there is, we're going to put her link in there for the QuickBooks Online.
Yep, it's up there.
And what is the thing about your QuickBooks Online after the 30 days? You just have to make sure that your credit card is there.
Yes. So that's the thing, is that normally, like if you go on QuickBooks, the best deal you're going to find is like the 3 months at 50% off, but you have to choose between the free trial and that. So with mine, you get the free trial, plus you get 12 months of half off. So it really is a good deal, but you do, because there's that free trial, if you don't put your credit card on file by the time that free trial is up, you lose that discount. So you want to make sure that you do that, because we've had that happen to some people. So yes. So if you are just like, you know what, I think I can do it, I'm going to go DIY and watch some YouTube videos and figure it out. All power to you. Use my link to sign up for QuickBooks if you don't already have it. So jamietrollo.com/QuickBooks. It's up here on Facebook, down here on YouTube. But if you're kind of in that middle zone and you're like, I would love some support, whether you have QuickBooks already or not, because Courtney has both options. If you already have QuickBooks and you just want some extra support, I've put Courtney's link that has all her stuff. So she's got a quiz on there that tells you like which version of QuickBooks do I need, and will recommend what the best package for you is. And it even, in some cases, will go to my link. In some cases, will go to her membership. And she's also got this Black Friday deal, which sounds amazing. It's like tell us about the Black Friday deal a little bit.
So it's a QuickBooks Reboot Bootcamp. So it's really meant, so what I'm doing is I'm taking all of the information that I'm learning from my one-on-one sessions of what I take, the process that I take people through, but I know that people ghost. So what I really wanted to do was create a very short, succinct way to go through some training and then getting your QuickBooks, like basically reset in a 1-day live boot camp, because I've done a couple of boot camps lately, and I love at the end having like something that you can like have complete. So I wanted to do that for Black Friday.
I love that, because there are people who have ghosted and they're like, I got to get this set aside. That's 1 day you can set aside with Courtney as support to get you through this. Right. And then you can get it done and dusted. And I do recommend, like, don't wait until January, February, March, right? No. Do it now. So whether that means working with Courtney, whether it means doing it by yourself and trying to clean up by yourself, not recommended, working with Courtney to help you, or going ahead and outsourcing to a bookkeeper, do it now. Because again, those costs are it's not going to get cheaper later. It's not going to get cheaper because you waited till January. So you might as well start getting it now so that you can kind of breathe, right? A little bit.
Because you want to clean up what you only have a certain amount of time until you start filing your tax returns. So I like to have all of my books done by January 31st so that it gives my CPA plenty of time to deal with my books, So if you are needing cleanup, now's the perfect time, especially like with the holidays, like just pop in a little bit. I know it's not like something that sounds super fun, but when you have a little bit of time off and you just put an hour a week on the calendar, just put something on there, just so that you can kind of start the cleanup process. And so a lot of times when people are, still using spreadsheets, the cost of the software alone is like a big thing. So totally understand if you don't want to outsource, but you definitely need to figure out a way to get on that software. So that would be your first step. And then honestly, like if you are at the point where you're like, I just cannot afford a bookkeeper, why don't you put that in your goal path? Like, how many months do you want it to be to where you hire that bookkeeper and just, work that goal? How much revenue do I need to make in order to make that happen? Just make it at least a goal of yours for next year. That's my recommendation. And then
I think that is great advice, because the goal should never be to continually always do your own bookkeeping, right? You should be so busy that the time that your time is so valuable that makes zero sense at all, right? That there are other places in your business, or even that you just want to be able to enjoy your personal life, because wouldn't that be nice, right? Like, think about the time trade-off. I think that's what people sometimes miss, is how much time is it taking you? Think about, like, if you were to keep up with this, which you want to, right? How much time would that take you? Okay. Take the cost of a bookkeeper, divide by that. Does it make sense, right? In how much you could be making in your own business per hour. I think these are all great. So contact information for Courtney. Everything, if you're watching me on Facebook, The links are above. You should see a link to all of Courtney's offerings and her landing page. If you're watching me on YouTube, which you're not because you're a Facebook user, but if you're watching me on YouTube, they will be down below in the description section. So you should have a link to that. There's the link to just if you want to DIY and get QuickBooks, there's my link in there. And there's also the link to the preferred vendors. If you're like, okay, you convinced me, I'm just going to outsource the whole dang thing so I don't have to deal with this, then there is the link to that as well. And like I said, there's several of our preferred vendors are on here. So April's on here, Christina's on here, Bree, tax preparer, she's on here. It's going to, like I think she wrote in earlier, it's going to be more expensive if you bring your books to a tax preparer and they're not cleaned up, right? That's going to cost you more for your tax preparer if they even offer that service to clean up your books. And that's not really their sweet spot most of the time either. So let's see. Liz, I'm going to answer this and then we can jump off here because I know we're a little over always. This is such a great point that the goal to hire a bookkeeper, how do you know when you hit that point financially? Again, I think it's less about necessarily like how much you're making in your business and more about how much time would it take you to be keeping up with this, right? And making sure that you value that time. I think this is something as business owners we don't always do. We don't value the time. So if it was 3 hours a month, 5 hours a month to really do it the way you should be doing it, right? Look at the cost of a bookkeeper and divide it out. So if your bookkeeper, I don't know, bookkeepers really range, but like if your bookkeeper was $350 a month divided by the number of hours, is that worth it? And knowing that they're going to do a better job. So it's not just the time trade-off, but it's also, you're not going to be in that situation where you need extra cleanup work later, right? You're going to be able to have the peace of mind. So peace of mind is also worth something. So I think oftentimes the answer here is earlier than you probably think. I really do.
Yeah. And the one thing I wanted to mention is that, the second thing where you just say, hey, it's working just fine is actually doing your own bookkeeping. And so the biggest thing I've seen is that people are just in a routine and they just don't think about it. They're so good at it themselves. It doesn't take them that long, or they're scared or embarrassed to leave it to somebody. We've already spoken to that end. And I just want to tell you, I have never gotten into somebody's books and was like, oh my God, like what's happening? I am always very curious about the business owner, like what their goals are and how I can help. That is how I approach that. And I bet any of the other bookkeepers who are watching or the accountants, the preferred vendors can say the same. Like the only time that I'm ever judgmental about anyone is if they come to me and specifically tell me that they're trying to work the system. Like I said, I don't like to work with people like that because it's just not in my core values of what I want to do. So definitely do a time audit to see how much time that your bookkeeping is taking, like Jamie said, because it's something that at a certain point you should be outsourcing your bookkeeping.
This is a good question that we'll answer. So since QuickBooks Self-Employed, James asks, is free for TurboTax users. Is that ever a good option?
If you're an Uber driver.
What?
If you're an Uber driver.
Yeah. So I think gig workers, like if you are just a straight 1099 worker with no complexity, right? Then that can work. I think in most cases, though, if you are more a business owner and there is any level of complexity in your business, it's best to start with at least QuickBooks, like Simple Start, because, and as Courtney will tell you, you can't upgrade from Self-Employed directly into any other QuickBooks Online. If you get any of the other QuickBooks Online, Simple Start, Essentials Plus, you can upgrade or downgrade at your own will, right? They're totally separate platforms. And so Self-Employed, if you start there, it's going to be a pain when you decide you need more functionality. So I usually recommend that people start at least with like Simple Start and then see if there's more that you need, right? But Self-Employed is really meant for straight up, gig economy type workers. If you are even like maybe MLMs, direct sales people, right? Like that would be another one where that could make sense. Although direct sales people may have some inventory, so maybe not, So there are a few things like that, but for the most part, I generally say no. Bree says judgment free zone. Okay. So yes, exactly. Let's see. Yeah, Self-Employed. Everybody's good. Everybody's in agreement. I'm glad when that happens. And I get it. Facebook user, you need to give me permission to see your name. I can't tell who this is. I don't know if this is one of our preferred vendors or not. But anyway, so I'm glad you guys, looks like you guys have enjoyed the chat. Sorry to the person asking if we're doing Gusto today. No, the person that we had coming on for Gusto got COVID-19, but we are going to reschedule. So that will be coming maybe next week. We're going to see how things go. We'll let you guys know because I know that's a popular one. You guys want to hear about payroll. So we are going to have a chat about payroll, but Courtney saved the day yesterday and said she could come on and chat. Which I think is great because I think this is a great time to be thinking about getting your books cleaned up. We're in November, y'all. Like we're almost in December at this point. The year is closing out. If you can get that stuff kind of closed out and dusted off, it's going to make your life so much easier in the first quarter of next year. Okay, so we're gonna let Courtney go, and we're gonna say thank you, Courtney. And y'all go check out her stuff because she's awesome, and she's one of my pals. So it's always fun to have her on. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Bye.